At this point, we've conducted root cause analysis, we have an idea of what's going on, we've set some objectives for what we'd like to do about it, and we've looked into what we'll need in order to do something about it by examining what the required capabilities might be. Now, our focus turns to gap analysis. This is the process of checking what our current capabilities are against what we need to be able to do in order to complete those objectives. It may be possible to resolve problems or to leverage opportunities using only existing capabilities. In other words, there may be no gaps between what we'd like to do and what we can do right now. However, in most cases, new capabilities or assets of some sort will need to be developed in order to create or achieve that solution. A full review of the existing capabilities can help to prevent a reinvent the wheel scenario, though, allowing us to better determine what we can do now, what might be able to be modified in order to fit a need, and where we might need to develop new talents or assets entirely. First, we can turn once again to process flows. What existing processes can help address the issue as they exist today, right now? In addition, how can existing processes be retooled in order to help address an issue? It could be that we're doing things pretty much the right way, but there's just a small tweak that we could make that could allow us to complete an objective successfully. The training protocols for our fulfillment center are a perfect example of this. There's nothing wrong with the training, except not everyone is receiving it at the right time. So, simply working on our scheduling and our rules for who undergoes training and when would allow us to fix this issue using existing resources. Third, how can existing processes either grow or be refined in order to address the issue? Perhaps we don't need to retool them or change them so much as just build them out even further. Maybe once we've begun to roll out that new training, we notice that our trainer is now severely overworked and that the reason we had that training scheduled only semi-annually is because they have to travel to many different fulfillment centers. In that case, the answer might be bringing additional trainers on board, growing the process so that it can better address the overall company's needs. Process flows can also help us to answer what resources can be reallocated in order to help address an issue. We may see that there's duplicative work and also a need for additional talent in the same area. In that case, we could simply retask some of those individuals away from the duplicative work and toward what we need them to do in order to achieve objectives. What resources are necessary in order to address the issue, and which ones are missing entirely? We can see this to some extent on the process flow, because if we don't see anyone responsible for certain tasks or anything similar to tasks that we know we need to accomplish in order to meet our objectives, then these are areas where we have a capability gap that will need to be filled with wholly new work. The business architecture can also be very valuable to revisit here. Present models need to accurately reflect existing resources, processes, and capabilities in order to be effective, while future-focused models should address the resources, processes, and capabilities deemed necessary to meet our objectives. By comparing the two, we can get a clear indication of where the gaps might lie and what work will be necessary moving forward. At this point, we can revisit the capability tables we began to build when first discussing what our required capabilities might be. Here, we can now expand it in order to include specific deliverables that will help us to fill gaps in our current capabilities. This can also help lead to the development of recommended actions, which lets us move forward in creating a business case, which can then lead to a project to achieve these objectives. Here, we again see our first three columns joined by a new one titled Deliverables to Fill Gaps. When addressing fulfillment times that are below target and the root cause of inadequate training, we see that enhanced training might be needed and that special training for new recruits or transfers might be useful. The deliverables we might use to fill these gaps include a new training curriculum, as well as upgraded or expanded onboarding processes and training. When it comes to a lack of valuable features in our current platform and our desire to deploy a next-gen platform with additional features, we can fill this gap with the development, selection, or deployment of a next-gen platform of some sort once we've investigated this fully. When it comes to our customer satisfaction being below target levels and the increased defect rate we think might help be behind that, we see that an addition of new quality assurance procedures is one new capability we could suggest. To fill that gap, we should develop, evaluate, test, and deploy new quality assurance methods, as well as to design new QA training to make sure that our quality assurance staff are aware of the best practices to keep the defect rate low. When it comes to our inferior materials quality and our suggestion that budgetary flexibility to contract with higher quality sources might be a feature that could help solve that cause, we can help fill this gap with new guidelines that allow greater financial latitude for our procurement staff, while making sure that our business interests are protected and we don't so adversely affect margins that we create problems for other portions of the company.